bkgoswami. And checks to see if we're online. Yes, we are live. Good. All right. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. All right, let's get started. Let me get the guitar and we'll chant a little bit. Song. Let's see, what song should we chant? All right. Shri Radhika Stava. Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Gokula Taruni Mandala Maite Taruni Mandala Maite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Damodara Vardhana Vese Adi Nishkuta Vrinda Vineshe Damodara Vardhana Vese Adi Nishkuta Vrinda Vineshe Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Shabantari Navashashi Leke Anita Sagi Guna Ramitavi Shake Vishabandari Navashashileke Anita Sagikuna Ramitavi Shake Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Karuna Gurumai Karuna Bharate Sanna Jaya Jaya Madhava Jaya Jaya. Hare Krishna, Krishna, oh Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare Hare, Rama Hare, Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Nijai Gaur, Go, Hare, Hare, Mo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivacharya All Stoteta Satashi Shiman His Divine Grace Abhaya Chanananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantagoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Vedas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sai Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturanam Ki Jai Jayadasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimad Vilasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deja Tarane. So we're going to continue with our study of the Krishna book, and we're on the chapter Prayers of the Personified Vedas, which is a very philosophical chapter, so it's going to take a lot longer to go through this chapter. This is the second day of studying this particular chapter. So let's go to this chapter. Actually, I should read the translation to this poem first. O Radha, all glories unto you, beloved of Madhava, object of worship for all the young girls of Gokula. You dress yourself in such a way as to increase Lord Damodar's love and attachment for you. You are the controller of Vrindavan, the pleasure groves of Lord Hari. You are a new moon arisen from the ocean of King Vrishabhanu, and you are the friend of Lalita, and your wonderful qualities, friendliness, kindness, and faithfulness to Krishna endear you to Vishaka. You are an ocean of compassion, and your divine characteristics are described by the four Kumaras, Sanaka, Sanatan, Sananda, and Sanat Kumar of Radha. Please be merciful to me. Srimati Radharani Ki Jai, Srila bkgoswami Ki Jai. So, let's go on to the Krishna book. Om Magana Timidandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur and Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So I'm warning you, this is going to be very philosophical. Let's share the screen. And here we go. Chapter 87, Prayers by the Personified Vedas. Okay. Let's just get this set up here. Okay. Prayers by the Personified Vedas. Make sure that the volume is proper. Here. Needs to be set up a little higher. Okay, that's good. Okay. The statements of the personified Vedas give clear evidence that the Vedic literature is presented only for understanding Krishna. Of course, Bhagavad Gita 15:15 states that very clearly. Aham eva Vedo. By all the Vedas I am to be known. The statements of the personified Vedas give clear evidence. Yes, we read that. Bhagavad Gita confirms that through all the Vedas it is Krishna alone who has to be understood. Krishna is always enjoying either in the material world or the spiritual world because he is the supreme enjoyer. For him there is no distinction between the material and spiritual worlds. The material world is an impediment for the ordinary living entities because they are under its control, but Krishna, being the control of the material world, has nothing to do with the impediments it offers. He supremely swarat, independence. And he comes to the material world to enact his pastimes. Some of them are like Paritranaya, Sananam, Vinashaya, Shadushkritam, but even more importantly, to enact the pastimes of enjoying different rasas that, let's say, in the spiritual world are not fully manifest, like the rasa of anger, ghastliness. And sometimes he has his devotees come down to enjoy these different rasas. And also he comes down to enjoy the rasa of compassion, saving us, the conditioned souls. Therefore, in different parts of the Upanishads, the Vedas declare the Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternal, full of all knowledge and bliss. Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. That one Supreme Personality of Godhead exists in the heart of every living entity. Because of his all-pervasiveness, he is able to enter not only into the hearts of living entities, but even into the atoms also. As the Supersoul, he is controller of all activities of the living entities. He lives within all of them and witnesses their actions, allowing them to act according to their desires, and also giving them the results of their different activities. He is the living force of all things, but he is transcendental to the material qualities. He is omnipotent, means all-powerful. He is also omniscient, which means all-knowing, but not only all-knowing everything that's happening right now, he knows everything that happened in the past, whatever happened, and he knows everything that will happen in the future. He's expert in manufacturing everything, and on account of his superior natural knowledge, he can bring everyone under his control. As such, he is everyone's master. He is sometimes manifest on the surface of the globe, but he is simultaneously within all matter. Desiring to expand himself in multi-forms, he glanced over the material energy, and thus innumerable living entities became manifest. Everything is created by a superior energy, and everything in his creation appears to be perfectly done without deficiency. Those who aspire for liberation from this material world must therefore worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate cause of all causes. He is just like the total mass of earth, from which varieties of earthly pots are manufactured. The pots are made of earthly clay, they rest on earth, and after being destroyed, their elements ultimately merge back into earth, the original cause of all varieties of manifestation. You may say, but what does it mean that everything is acting perfectly? What about all the miseries? Well, the miseries have been perfectly arranged by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to teach us that without him we are miserable. Employing this analogy of Brahman with the earth, the impersonalists especially stress the Vedic statement, Sarvam Kalv Idam Brahma, everything is Brahman. The impersonalists do not take into account the varieties of manifestation emanating from the supreme cause, Brahman. Just like you would say everything is wood, the door is wood, the chair is wood, whatever else is wood. Your dunda is wood. The bookcase I'm looking at right now is wood. That's true. But there's variety of the manifestations of wood. So in one sense, yes, everything is Brahman, but there's varieties. That's the point. They simply consider that everything emanates from Brahman after the structure merges into Brahman, and then the intermediate stage of manifestation is also Brahman. But all the Mayavadis believe that prior to its manifestation, the cosmos was in Brahman. After creation, remains in Brahman. After destruction, and merges into Brahman. They do not know what Brahman is. The Brahma Samhita, however, clearly describes Brahman. The living entities, space, time, and the material elements like fire, earth, sky, water, and mind constitute the total cosmic manifestation known as Wu, Bwa, and Twa, which is manifested by Govinda. It flourishes on the strength of Govinda and after annihilation enters into and is conserved in Govinda. Lord Brahma therefore says, I worship Lord Govinda, the original personality, the cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam. So as Krishna, as the Mahavishnu, manifests the material energy, and also as the Mahavishnu, the material energy enters into him at the time of the cosmic dissolution. The word Brahma indicates the greatest of all and the maintainer of everything. In fact, that's what the word Brahman means, the greatest. The impersonalists are attracted by the greatness of the sky, but because of their poor fund of knowledge, they are not attracted by the greatness of Krishna. In our practical life, however, we are attracted by the greatness of a person and not by the greatness of a big mountain. Or we are attracted more by the greatness of a person because a person is more attractive and more variegated as a personality and all sorts of nice things. You can have a relationship. Thus, the term Brahman actually applies to Krishna only. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna concluded that Lord Krishna is the Para Brahman. That means Supreme Brahman, or the supreme resting place of everything. Krishna is the Supreme Brahman because of his unlimited knowledge, unlimited potencies, unlimited strength, unlimited influence, unlimited beauty, and unlimited renunciation. You may say, what is Krishna's renunciation? Well, he owns the material world. It's all his. But he has no attraction to enjoy it. Wow. Be like if you owned all the airplanes, all the cars, every person, and you never enjoyed them. You never exploited them. You never used them. You were simply compassionate to all the living entities. That's ultimate realization or renunciation. Ultimately, therefore, the word Brahman can be applied to Krishna only, in one sense. Arjuna affirms that because the impersonal Brahman is the effulgence emanated as the rays of Krishna's transcendent body, Krishna is the Para Brahman. Everything rests on Brahman, but Brahman itself rests on Krishna. So here, this context, Brahman means spirit, and sometimes Brahman means everything, sometimes Brahman means the greatest. We are Brahman, but Krishna is the supreme Brahman, Para Brahman. Therefore, Krishna is the ultimate Brahman or Para Brahman. The material elements are accepted as the inferior energy of Krishna. By their interaction, the cosmic manifestation takes place, rests on Krishna, and after dissolution again enters into the body of Krishna as his subtle energy. Krishna is therefore the cause of both manifestation and dissolution. It's his desires. Apta kama, his desires are carried out. It's not that Krishna personally has to manifest everything. In fact, we understand that Krishna manifests the entire material creation just as when he's sleeping or in a rest called the Yoga Nidra. So, Sarvakal Vidam Brahma means that everything is Lord Krishna in the sense that everything is his energy. That is the vision of the Mahabhagavatas. Mahabhagavata means the great devotees, or the big devotees. They see everything in relation to Krishna. The impersonalists argue that Krishna himself has been transformed into many, and therefore everything is Krishna, and worship of anything is worship of him. This false argument is answered by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Although everything is a transformation of the energy of Krishna, that's called Shakti Parinam. But Krishna doesn't become transformed. Brahman is not transformed. The energy of Brahman is transformed. Okay. He is not present everywhere. He is simultaneously present and not present. By his energy, he is present everywhere, but as the energetic, he is not present everywhere. This simultaneous presence and non-presence is inconceivable to our present senses. And of course, the example Prabhupada always gives in this context is the sun is present everywhere the sun is shining, but it's not present. When you say, let the sun into the room, you are not letting the sun into the room in one sense. In another sense, you are, because you're letting the sun shine, the energy of the sun. But a clear explanation is given in the beginning of the Upanishad, in which is stated that the Supreme Lord is so complete that although unlimited energies and their transformations emanate from Krishna, Krishna's personality is not a least bit transformed. Our personality is transformed, not our identity, but the manifestation of our personality is transformed by the modes of nature. Therefore, since Krishna is the cause of all causes, intelligent persons should take shelter of his lotus feet. Good advice. Krishna advises everyone just to surrender unto him alone, and this is the way of the Vedic instruction. Since Krishna is the cause of all causes, he is worshipped by all kinds of sages and saints through observance of the regulative principles. As far as meditation is concerned, great personalities meditate on the transcendental form of Krishna within the heart. In this way, the minds of great personalities are always engaged in Krishna. With their minds engaged in Krishna, naturally, the captivated devotees simply talk of Krishna. Talking of Krishna or singing of Krishna is called kirtan. Lord Chaitanya recommends Kirtaniya Sadahare, Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 1731. And of course, that's part of the Shikshashtaka. Trinadapi Sunichena Tararapi Suhishnuna Munina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahare. So if you want to be able to Kirtaniya Sadahare, always chant Hare Krishna, always glorify Krishna, then we have to be very humble, more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respects to others. That is called Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is so sublime that anyone who takes this process is elevated to the highest perfection of life, far, far beyond the conception of liberation. Taking to the process means following it. In Bhagavad Gita, therefore, Krishna advises everyone always to think of him, render devotional service to him, worship him, and offer obeisances to him. Manmana bhavavat bhakto matya shimana namaskuru. Render devotion, worship him, and offer obeisances. In this way, a devotee becomes fully Krishnized. And being always situated in Krishna consciousness ultimately goes back to Krishna. It's back home. Although the Vedas have recommended worship of different demigods as different parts and parcels of Krishna, it is to be understood that such instructions are meant for less intelligent men who are still attracted by material sense enjoyment. But the person who actually wants perfect fulfillment of the mission of human life should simply worship Lord Krishna, and that will simplify the matter and completely guarantee the success of his human life. Although the sky, the water, and the land are all part of the material world, when one stands on the solid land, his position is more secure than when he stands in the sky or in the water, because you can't stand in the sky or in the water. An intelligent person, therefore, does not stand under the protection of different demigods. Although they are part and parcel of Krishna, rather he stands on the solid ground of Krishna consciousness. That makes his position sound and secure. Impersonalists sometimes give the example that if one stands on a stone or a piece of wood, one certainly stands on the surface of the land because the stone and wood both rest on the surface of the earth. But it may be replied that if one stands directly on the surface of the earth, he is more secure than if he stands on wood or a stone that rests on the earth. In other words, taking shelter in Paramatma or taking shelter in personal Brahman is not as secure as a chorus as taking direct shelter of Krishna and Krishna consciousness. The position of the Jnanis and Yogis is therefore not as secure as the position of the devotees of Krishna. Lord Krishna has therefore advised in the Bhagavad Gita that only a person who has lost his sense takes to the worship of the demigods. And regarding persons attached to the impersonal Brahman, Srimad Bhagavatam says, "My dear Lord, those who think of themselves as liberated by mental speculation are not yet purified of the contamination of material nature because of their inability to find shelter of your lotus feet." It's all vimukta manina. They think they're liberated. It's just in their minds. Yay, yay, Ramanaksha, vimukta manina, tvayasta bhavada, vashuddha, buddhya, aruya, arura, krachena, parampadam tada. And that's what Prabhupada is quoting here. Although they rise to the transcendental situation of existence in impersonal Brahman, they certainly fall down from that exalted position because they deride your lotus feet. Lord Krishna therefore advises that the worshippers of demigods are not very intelligent persons because they derive only temporary, exhaustible results. Their endeavors are those of less intelligent men. On the other hand, the Lord assures that his devotee has no fear of falling. The personified Vedas continue to pray, "Dear Lord, considering all points of view, if a person has to worship someone superior to himself, then just out of good behavior he should stick to the worship of your lotus feet because you're the ultimate controller of creation, maintenance, and dissolution. You are the controller of the three worlds. You are the controller of the 14 upper and lower worlds, and you are the controller of the three material qualities, goodness, passion, and ignorance. Demigods and persons advanced in spiritual knowledge always hear and chant about your transcendental pastimes because this process has the specific potency of nullifying the accumulated results of sinful life. Intelligent persons factually dip into the ocean of your nectarian activities and very patiently hear about them. Thus they are immediately freed from the contamination of the material qualities. They do not have to undergo severe penances and austerities for advancement in spiritual life, thank God. The chanting and hearing of your transcendental pastimes is the easiest process for self-realization. And simply by submissive oral reception of the transcendental message, one's heart is cleansed of all dirty things. Thus Krishna consciousness becomes fixed in the heart of the devotee. The great authority Bhishma Deva has also given the opinion that this process of hearing and chanting about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the highest religious process. Remember that. Highest religious process. And the Taittiriya Upanishad says the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the essence of all Vedic ritualistic performances. Dear Lord, the personified Vedas continued. The devotee who wants to elevate himself simply by the process of devotional activity, especially by hearing and chanting, very soon comes out of the clutches of the dualities of material existence. By this simple process of penance and austerity, the supersoul within the devotee's heart is very much pleased that he gives the devotee direction so that he may go back home, back to Godhead. What is that? Teisham saranayuktanam vashatam pratipurvakam vadami buddhi yogam tam yanamam upayanti te. For those who are devoted to me, I give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that one who engages all his activities and senses in devotional service to the Lord becomes completely peaceful because the supersoul is satisfied with him and thus the devotee becomes transcendental to all dualities such as heat and cold, honor and dishonor. Being freed from all dualities, he feels transcendental bliss, and he no longer suffers cares and anxieties due to material existence. That would be nice. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that the devotee, always absorbed in Krishna consciousness, has no anxieties for his maintenance or protection. Being constantly absorbed in Krishna consciousness, he ultimately achieves the highest perfection. While in material existence, he lives very peacefully and blissfully without cares and anxieties, and after quitting this body, he goes back home, back to Godhead. The Lord confirms in the Bhagavad Gita, my supreme abode is a transcendental place from which, having gone, one never returns to this material world. Anyone who attains the supreme perfection, being engaged in my personal devotional service in the eternal abode, reaches the highest perfection of human life and does not have to come back to the miserable material world. Joy. The Personified Vedas continued. Dear Lord, it is imperative that the living entities be engaged in Krishna consciousness, always rendering devotional service by such prescribed methods as hearing and chanting and executing your orders. If a person is not engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, it is useless for him to exhibit the symptoms of life. Of course, the Bhagavatam says his breathing is like the bellows, and his long life is like the long life of a tree. And he's like the beast who eat and discharge semen. Generally, if a person is breathing, he is accepted to be alive, but a person without Krishna consciousness may be compared to a bellows in a blacksmith's shop. That's Bhagavatam. The big bellows is a bag of skin which exhales and inhales air, and a human being who simply lives within the bag of skin and bones without taking to Krishna consciousness and loving devotional service is no better than the bellows. Similarly, a non-devotee's long duration of life is compared to the long existence of a tree, which I mentioned, and his voracious eating capacity is compared to the eating of dogs and hogs, and his enjoyment in sex life is compared to that of the hogs and goats. Phew. The cosmic manifestation has been made possible because of the entrance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as Mahavishnu within this material world. The total material energy is agitated by the glance of Mahavishnu. Of course, as I mentioned before, that glance is called Shambhu, or Lord Shiva. And only then, because the Lord doesn't come in contact with matter, and only then does the interaction of the three material qualities begin. Therefore, it should be concluded that whatever material facilities we are trying to enjoy are available only due to the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Within the body, there are 5 different departments of existence, known as Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomoya, Vijnanamoya. And at last, Anandamoya. In the beginning of life, every living entity is food conscious. A child or animal is satisfied only by getting nice food. This stage of consciousness, in which the goal is to eat sumptuously, is called Annamaya. Now, my question is, how many of you adults are mainly on the Annamaya platform? Phew. Basically, that's the most important thing for you, just to eat tasty food and not control your senses. Anna means food. After this, one lives in the consciousness of being alive. If one can continue his life without being attacked or destroyed, one thinks himself happy. This stage is called Pranamaya, or consciousness of one's existence. Another manifestation of this is when one tries to enjoy his senses in a different way, like sex life, or smelling different things, or seeing different things, tintillating the eyes, the nose, the belly, the genitals, the ears. This is called Pranamaya, which is a very low stage of consciousness. One sense is a little higher than Annamaya, which is just like food, eat. Pranamoya is, basically enjoy. But higher than this stage, or after this stage, when one is situated in the mental platform, his consciousness is called Manomoya. The materialistic civilization is primarily situated in these three stages: Manomoya, Pranamoya, and Manomoya. Mana means the mind. The first concern of civilized persons is economic development. The next concern is defense against being annihilated. And the next consciousness is mental speculation, the philosophical approach to the values of life. Of course, Prabhupada here is paraphrasing Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. Anyway, or at least Artha, Kama, and Moksha. If by the evolutionary process of philosophical life, one happens to reach the platform of intellectual life, and understands that he is not this material body, but a spiritual soul, he is situated in the Vijnana Moya platform. Vijnana means intelligence. Thus, by evolution in spiritual life, he comes to the understanding of the Supreme Personality, Supreme Lord, the Supreme Soul. When one develops his relationship with him and executes devotional service, that stage of life is called Krishna consciousness, the Ananda Maya stage, which means the blissful stage. Ananda Maya. Ananda Maya is the blissful life of full knowledge and eternity, as it is said in the Vedanta Sutra. Ananda Maya Vyasat. The Supreme Brahman and subordinate Brahman, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the living entities are both joyful by nature. As long as the living entities are situated in the lower four stages of life, Anamoya, Pranamoya, Manomoya, and Vijnanamoya, they are considered to be in the material condition of life. But as soon as one reaches the stage of Anandamoya, Ananda means unlimited happiness, he is a liberated soul. This Anandamoya stage is explained in the Bhagavad Gita as the Brahma Bhuta. Srimad Bhagavatam 4:30-20. Brahma Bhuta, that's the Bhagavad Gita says, Brahma Bhuta Prasanadana Sachatina Kanshati Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Bhad Bhaktim Labate Param. That one who's in the spiritual platform, Prasanatma, he's a happy camper. Sachatina Kanshati, he's not hankering or lamenting about anything. Sometimes we lament because we lost our dearly beloved, we lost money, whatever. I didn't lose money, don't worry. Just like many devotees nowadays, they thought they would get something for nothing, so therefore they invested in cryptocurrency. And the crypto markets, currency has crashed in many respects. And so they lament. They were hankering to get something for nothing, and then they lamented. Therefore, it is said in the Brahma stage of life, there's no anxiety and no hankering. Phew, no lamentation, no hankering. This stage begins when one is equally disposed toward all living entities, and then it samaksarveshu bhuteshu, and then it expands to the stage of Krishna consciousness. That's the only way you're going to be equally disposed towards other living entities, because you understand, yastu savrati bhuta dhyatvatna pashatu. Everyone is part and parcel of Krishna. Like Lord said, Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, in which one always hankers to render service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This hankering for advancement and devotional service is not the same as hankering for sense gratification in material existence. In other words, hankering remains in spiritual life, but it becomes purified. I want Krishna. I want to please Krishna. Similarly, when our senses are purified, they are freed from all material stages, namely Anamoya, Pranamoya, Manomoya, and Vijnanamoya. And they become situated in the highest stage, Anandamoya, or blissful life in Krishna consciousness. The Mayavadi philosophers consider Anandamoya to be the stage of being merged in the Supreme. To them, Anandamoya means that the supersoul and the individual soul becomes one. That's not very blissful to me. But the real fact is that oneness does not mean merging into the Supreme and losing one's own individual existence. Merging into the spiritual existence is the living entity's realization of qualitative oneness with the Supreme Lord. In other words, we have the same qualities of the Lord, but not the same quantity. In his aspects of eternity and knowledge, in other words, our nature is eternal and full of knowledge, and also blissful. But when the actual Anandamoya blissful stage is attained, when one is engaged in devotional service, that is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita. Mad bhaktim labate param. That's right. Brahma-bhuta Prasanandika. Here, Lord Krishna states that the Brahma-bhuta Ananda Maya stage is complete only when there is exchange of love between the Supreme and the subordinate living entities. Unless one comes to this Anandamaya stage, is like the breathing of bellows. Remember that. Unless you come to Krishna consciousness, your life is no better than the breathing of the bellows, or duration of life is like a tree. And you are no better than the lower animals like the camels, hogs, and dogs, although you're doing the same activities in a more sophisticated way, thinking you're better. But you're just like the hogs who are wallowing in the stool. Sorry about that. Undoubtedly, the eternal living entity cannot be annihilated at any point. But the lower species of life exist in a miserable condition, whereas one who is engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord is situated in the pleasurable or Anandamaya status of life. The different stages described above are all in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although in all circumstances there exists both the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entities. The difference is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead always exists in the Anandamaya stage. He's always there. Whereas the subordinate living entities, because of the minute position as fragmental portions of the Supreme Lord, are prone to fall to the other stages of life till they become absolutely pure devotees. Although in all the stages both the Supreme Lord and the living entities exist, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is always transcendental to our concept of life, whether we are in bondage or in liberation. The whole cosmic manifestation becomes possible by the grace of the Supreme Lord. It exists by the grace of the Supreme Lord, and when annihilated, it merges into the existence of the Supreme Lord. As such, the Supreme Lord is the supreme existence, the cause of all causes. Therefore, the conclusion is that without development of Krishna consciousness, one's life is simply a waste of time. As Shakespeare says, one is a poor player that struts and frets his time upon the stage and then is heard no more. It's true. I mean, I remember so many of my relatives that did this, did that. Where are they now? I mean, of course, the soul is somewhere. But whatever they did is fruitless. Fruitless. Useless. Temporary. For those who are very materialistic and cannot understand the situation of the spiritual world, the abode of Krishna, the great sages have recommended the yogic process whereby one gradually rises from meditation on the abdomen, that's the belly, which is called the Muladhara or Manipuraka meditation. Muladhara and Manipuraka are technical terms which refer to the intestines within the abdomen, the energy centers. Grossly materialistic persons think that economic development is of foremost importance because they are under the impression that a living entity exists only by eating. Eat, drink, and be merry. Such grossly materialistic persons forget that although we may eat as much as we like, if the food is not digested, it produces the troubles of indigestion and acidity. Like acid reflux. Phew. Anyone's ever had that and you wake up in the middle of the night and there's acid in the throat. Therefore, eating is not in itself the cause of vital energy of life. For digestion of eatables, we have to take shelter of another, superior energy, which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita as Vaishvanara. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that he helps with digestion in the form of Vaishvanara. The Supreme Personality of God is all-pervasive. Therefore, his presence in the stomach as Vaishvanara is not extraordinary. Prabhupada said, if Krishna's pleased, you can digest nails. Don't try it. So, in other words, you're dependent on Krishna to digest and give yourself energy. And Krishna, in one sense, is manifested as that fire of digestion. Krishna is actually present everywhere. The Vaishnava therefore marks his body with temples of Vishnu. He first marks a tilak temple on the abdomen, then on the chest, then between the collarbones. It's right there. Then on top of the forehead, and gradually marks the top of the head, the Brahma Randra. The 13 temples of Tilak marked on the body of Vaishnava are known as follows. On the forehead is the temple of Lord Keshava, Keshavaya Namaha. On the belly is the temple of Lord Narayana, Narayanaya Namaha. The chest, the temple of Madhavaya Namaha. And on the throat between the two collarbones, Govindaya Namaha. On the right side of the waist is Vishnu. On the right side arm, the temple of Lord Madhusudana, and on the right side of the collarbone, the temple of Trivikram. Similarly, on the left side of the waist is the temple of Vamanadeva. On the left arm, the temple of Sridhar. On the left side of the collarbone, the temple of Rishikesha. On the upper back, the temple called Padmanabha, and on the lower back, Damodarai, on the temple called Damodar. On the top of the head is the temple called Vasudeva. This is the process of meditation on the Lord's situation in different parts of the body. But for those who are not Vaishnavas, great sages recommend meditation on the bodily concept of life, meditation on the intestines. The energy center there. On the heart, on the throat, on the eyebrows, on the forehead, and then on the top of the head. Boom! And then yogis pop out of the top of the head. Some of the sages in the disciplic succession from the great saint Aruna meditate on the heart because the supersoul stays within the heart along with the living entity. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 15th chapter where the Lord states, I'm situated in everyone's heart. Okay, a little more about this. As part of devotional service, Vaishnavas protect the body for the service of the Lord, but those who are gross materialists accept the body as the self. They worship the body by the yogic process of meditation on the different bodily parts, such as Manipuraka, Dharma, and Hridaya, heart, gradually rising to the Brahma Randra on the top of the head. The first-class yogi who has attained perfection in the practice of yoga system ultimately passes through the Brahma Randra, that means right in the head, to any one of the planets in either material or spiritual worlds. How a yogi can transfer himself to another planet is vividly described in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So yogis, generally, they can come out of the Brahma Randra. The devotees, what I've seen generally is the devotees leave the body through the mouth. And those who are materialists, I won't tell you where they leave the body from, but it's lower than the belly. Okay, so that's all we have time for. We're going to go take questions. We just write so I know where we left off. We left off here. Of course, we always are here. Left off on the second canto. Oops. Pen. Second canto. Okay. Got it. Okay, I'll stop sharing. And we will allow you to unmute yourselves if you so wish to do. And if you have a question, comment, argument, you can. Oh, Rakesh, you already have a question.
Yes, Gurudev, please accept me. Yes.
Yes, what's up? What's the question?
Question is, Guru Maharaj, you said devotees live from the mouth. Why, like, what's the significance of that instead of a Brahmarudra?
Because they don't have to work at it. It's easier. That's a natural situation. Because they're always chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And it can't leave through the ears. So they're always chanting. Their consciousness is right here, the mouth and the ears. Satatam kirtiyanto mam yatantascha jadavrita. And so, because of that, they can leave through the mouth, that aperture. The soul has to leave through some aperture. You don't leave through the heart because there's not an aperture there. So you can leave through, like I mentioned, the grossly sinful, intoxicated people, like certain music stars, generally they leave through a lower aperture, which usually is utilized in the toilet. Anyway, I didn't want to get to that point, but that's really how they leave. Because that's where their consciousness is at, right? How low can you go? But a devotee's consciousness is hearing and chanting Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smarnam. So there's no question of living through the lower apertures. A Hatha yogi devotee, he could leave through the Brahmarandra. Yeah. But generally, devotees leave through the mouth. You see that when the devotees leave their bodies, they say, Krishna. And the soul comes out. Boom! Goes back to Godhead. Okay, next question. Gopal, you have a question.
Please accept my obeisance, Srila Gurudev.
Yeah.
So I have a doubt. The personified Vedas here is saying that taking shelter of Krishna is far more reliable than taking shelter of the demigods. But Banasura took shelter of Mother Kotara, and when he was fighting with Krishna, Kotara was able to save him from Krishna himself.
That was a pastime. Because Kotara, she appeared before Krishna completely naked, as that story goes. She wasn't able to save Krishna, save Banasura, because ultimately he had a armectomy. It was actually Krishna's devotee, Lord Shiva, who was able to save Banasura, and also because Krishna's devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, was his relative, so Krishna had guaranteed he wouldn't kill any of the descendants of Prahlad Maharaj. So it wasn't Kotara. She just tried her best, but she wasn't able to save him. It wasn't her who saved him. She just delayed the ultimate, not demise, but the ultimate defeat of Banasura.
So when it seems like the demigods are helping, it's still just temporary?
Temporary help. They can't protect you from death, disease, and old age. Temporarily, they can do some things. But ultimately, whatever benediction they give you is coming from Krishna, has to be okayed by Krishna, has to be authorized by Krishna. So don't waste your time worshiping Mother Kotara. Okay?
Thank you, Gurudev.
Don't waste your time, Gopal.
Yes, Gurudev.
Time is of the essence. You don't know how much time you have left in this world. We don't know. It could be 1/2 of a second, or it could be 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, whatever. But, any of us can go like that instantaneously. So, who else has a question? Type in the text window or unmute yourself or raise your hand. You got 4 more minutes to ask questions. Questions? Nobody has a question.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Rita. So, what's up? What's your question?
Maybe a stupid question, but when a soul leaves the body, so it's the soul, the Atma, which leaves the body. What happens to the super soul?
Super Soul doesn't, he accompanies the soul. But anyway, the Super Soul is in the next body.
Okay, the companies. Okay,
Yeah, accompanies the soul. The Super Soul is always with the soul.
okay,
Never leaves the soul. Krishna is always with you. Always with you. And when you enter a new body, it's a super soul. But it's just every super soul is the same, except it's not that you have a specific type of super soul, but the super soul knows every living entity. So it's not that you have a different super soul than I have a super soul. It's just that in my heart, the super soul is dictating to me. In your heart, the super soul is dictating to you. But your super soul knows everything about me, and my super soul knows everything about you, knows everything about everybody and everything.
it's Krishna.
Yeah, Krishna. Super soul is Krishna. It's the same super soul, it just he manifests himself differently in everybody's heart because he's interacting with that particular individual. And according to the size of the body, the super soul manifests himself as a certain size. Just like if you have a mirror, then according to, let's say, the size of the mirror, then the reflection appears at a different size. It's interesting.
Yeah.
According to the size of the mirror. So in the bug, in your heart, generally is described, the super soul is about 8 inches high, normal adult person. But in the heart of a bug, the super soul is not 8 inches high. The super soul is proportional to the size of the bug. Someone just asked me a question, crazy question on the internet. And this person, who shall remain nameless to protect the guilty, said, and this person is a little shorter than everyone else. He says, do I have a shorter super soul? You know, he's asking, is my super soul challenged in any way? No, your super soul is the same size. No, it's actually manifests. It's the same size super soul, but he manifests a different size in your heart. Okay, you know, if you're only 6 inches high, like that. What was that Disney character, Thumbelina? Then the super soul is only what, about an inch high. So, okay, any other questions, Sita?
No, all good. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Please,
All right,
Mahamudabis.
thank you for asking your questions. All right, okay, so here's some questions in the text window. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Super soul gets pleased. It is that when the super soul takes to Krishna, stays in the super soul. Super soul is Krishna. There's no difference. He just manifests differently. It's the same person. Advaita Chutanadi Ranata Rupavajam Purana Purusham Navyovidam Cha. However, for someone who's a pure devotee of Radha and Krishna, then Radha and Krishna, the super soul appears as Radha and Krishna. And if someone is a pure devotee of Lord Ram, like Hanuman, then the super soul appears as Sita and Ram. Pretty good. Does the soul also manifest different size? According to the body, it's not that super soul is not different sizes. I'd like to tell you that. He manifests his presence in different sizes, like reflection. Like the reflection, the example given for the presence of the super soul is the reflection of the moon on different bodies of water, like a lake or whatever. The reflection of the moon is proportionate to the body of water. For example, if I have a glass of water and I see the reflection of the moon in the glass on the water, the reflection of the moon may only be 1 inch high. Does that mean the moon is 1 inch high? No. But the reflection or the manifestation of the moon is 1 inch high. But the supersoul has no material dimensions. The same way the soul has no material dimensions, 1/10,000 of the tip of the hair, which means no material dimensions. But the soul is reflected in the body, which is at different sizes. And the soul's consciousness is spread throughout the body through the bloodstream. Okay, that's a very good question. So we need to end now. Thank you very much. We'll continue with the study of this chapter, the prayers of the Personified Vedas, tomorrow. Very philosophical